You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hello and welcome to Psychedelics Cannabis Education News. It is, let's look at the calendar. It is February 9th, 2023. And you are live here with Newshawks, Glenn Prentice, and myself, Cindy Howell, from the Legacy420.com news desk. And we are live here on the network's Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Boxcast locations such as Roku TV and Firestick. And we're also at paceradio.net. And did I mention cbgtv.com? Good morning, Glenn.
Good morning, Cindy. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I am still riding on the excitement that we, as a network, have been nominated for Best Podcast. Yes, it's super exciting. Yeah, I've been voting daily. I have been sharing daily. I'm super excited to do this, and it's really exciting to just be nominated. I mean, I know that sounds cliche, but it's super true. It's really cool to just the fact that we're nominated. There's only 5 of us nominated in this category, and it's pretty exciting.
Being recognized a little bit.
Yeah. And on that note, I'm just going to play you a little ditty that Al and Irene put together for us to share. So we'll be right back in 1 minute. Well, that's really cool. We are nominated for this award as a whole network, and I'm really excited, and I'm pretty proud of us too. Yeah. So go on, head over to canexpo.ca and give us a vote. But we might as well get right into the stories, hey?
Sure.
We are heading over to StratCan. Cannabis seized from unlicensed businesses in New Brunswick.
Cannabis, including several colorful cannabis edibles, was seized from unlicensed retailers in New Brunswick on February 2nd. Investigators from the province's Department of Justice and Public Safety's Safer Communities program enforced warrants in Fredericton at High 420, which is at 315 Main Street, and in Dieppe, serving Green Buddha and Giggles to Go at 432 Champlain Street.
Okay, let me put that into my map so when I'm driving up to Ontario, I know where to go. Officials say a yet-to-be-determined amount of cannabis derivatives, cannabis products, and other items were seized. A company called Giggles to Go is still visible online, though, and offers delivery in the Fredericton area. 2 men were arrested in connection to the raids, 1 at each location. Both have subsequently been released. A 24-year-old man was arrested in connection to the raid in Fredericton, has a court date in April. The investigation related to the raid in Dieppe is still ongoing.
An image shared by officials from the Dieppe raid of the Green Buddha and Giggles to Go location shows several edible cannabis products that are knockoffs of popular snack food brands like Nerds, Chips Ahoy, Jolly Ranchers, Skittles, Mars Bars, and Starburst. Such products have become more popular and common in Canada in the last few years. Packaging can be found online and often includes a California THC logo stamp. and may change the spelling of the brand name in question.
In 2022, candy manufacturer Mars Canada Incorporated won a lawsuit against several listed online cannabis retailers in Canada who've been selling products using logos and branding associated with Skittles. Cannabis New Brunswick, the provincial regulator and retailer, held its first Cannabis East consumer and industry trade show in Moncton over the weekend. The day-and-a-half event included a Cannabis New Brunswick pop-up shop for cannabis sales. And I found out about that the day after it was over. I would have, it's not far, it's a 4-hour drive. I would have headed up to Moncton for a couple of days to see that. It looked really great.
If I was still there, I would have headed right over there.
Yeah. Yeah, it looked like there was a lot of places there and whatnot, but that's not what this story is supposed to be about. I agree that we should be changing the packaging of some of these edibles so a 6-year-old doesn't, see Skittles.
Yeah, I think the majority have different names or at least logos now.
They do, but it's the same packaging, just that, a Mars bar is called like a Czar's bar or something, but it looks exactly the same. And to a 6-year-old that can't read, hey, Al, it's something. So I agree that we should change the packaging, but that's all I agree with in that whole thing.
I like the name of that was Safer Communities Initiative.
Yeah. Yep. On to the second story. Might as well. We are heading over to MJ Biz Daily, and Canada is still waiting for cannabis consumption spaces, with some exceptions.
As Canada enters its 5th full year of adult use legalization, one type of cannabis business has been largely missing in action: legal cannabis consumption spaces, which remain relatively rare. Although authorities have issued outdoor cannabis consumption licenses for events such as music festivals, Canada's provincial governments have been slow to create a legal framework for permanent cannabis consumption spaces, if they have addressed the issue at all.
As a result, Canada's market for cannabis consumption lounges is underdeveloped in comparison to the U.S. jurisdictions such as California and Nevada, where such businesses are becoming part of the regulated industry landscape. Right now, cannabis consumption is still operating within a gray area, said Susan Dubedge, a postdoctoral fellow at University of Guelph's School of Hospitality, Food and Tourism Management, who studies cannabis tourism in Canada.
And although Dubedge knows of a few Canadian cannabis consumption businesses, they're doing it because they're smart people. They are able to maneuver around the regulations in order to offer these spaces. So when the inspectors come around, there's really nothing to say. They're not operating in any incorrect way.
Yeah, she is also co-founder and president of the not-for-profit Canadian Cannabis Tourism Alliance. She said the overall lack of legal consumption spaces is a missed opportunity in terms of Canada's cannabis tourism potential, and I agree. Definitely.
I think that cannabis needs to act quickly on seriously thinking about what kind of consumption regulations can we put into place. They're slow to regulate consumption sites, the provinces. Recreational cannabis legalization was led by the federal government, but regulation of smoking and vaping in most places falls to Canada's provincial and municipal governments, which have been slow to move the needle on cannabis consumption spaces.
None of Canada's 3 biggest adult use cannabis markets have formally approved permanent consumption lounges to date. Ontario cannabis consumers spent a projection 1.8 billion Canadian dollars on legal cannabis in 2022, according to Seattle-based cannabis data firm Headset. And just let me continue to say that they've done that, which is awesome. But Toronto used to have a number of cannabis consumption lounges. Now we have one.
Before it was legal, there was a lot of places you could go.
Yeah.
Although the Ontario government held an early 2020 consultation on consumption lounges, it didn't publish the results. The province's Ministry of the Attorney General confirmed to MJ Biz Daily the consultation was obtained by CBC News under Freedom of Information laws. No changes to the cannabis framework are expected at this time, a spokesperson for the Ontario Attorney General told MJ Biz Daily in a statement.
In Alberta, with projected cannabis sales of 796.4 million in 2022, the provincial government has left the door open to regulating consumption spaces, but it hasn't gone further. Alberta does allow temporary designated cannabis consumption spaces at festivals and events. However, and there has been interest in regulating consumption spaces at the municipal level.
British Columbia projected in 2022 cannabis sales of 668.1 million has made more concrete progress towards cannabis consumption businesses. The BC government recently completed a consumption space consultation and is in the process of deciding its next steps. George Smitherman, President and CEO of industry group Cannabis Council of Canada, C3, said provincial cannabis regulators have been preoccupied with managing distribution and retail.
Now, BC has, as far as I know, they have 2 consumption lounges right beside each other. They've got the Cannabis Culture. You go up 3 flights of stairs, and there's a beautiful dab lounge up there. And then, of course, right next door to them, they have the New Amsterdam Cafe, which is fairly infamous in Canada, and it's a beautiful spot.
Are you allowed to smoke in there?
In the cannabis culture, I'm not sure. I know that you can dab, you can vape. Okay. I'm not sure if you can actually, put fire to anything. In the New Amsterdam Cafe, until 5 p.m., I believe you can do everything downstairs, and after 5 p.m., both levels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's, and they're both really, really fantastic places with really, really fantastic staff, just FYI. It's interesting to note that in several different jurisdictions in the country, regulators are seemingly turning their attention a bit more to the opportunities related to consumption lounges, as Smitherman says. The lack of provincial regulations hasn't stopped some Canadian cannabis entrepreneurs, with a scattering of businesses involving cannabis consumption spaces of some kind.
In the hamlet of Mossley, Alberta, Serena Donovan operates Mary Jane Manor, a boutique hotel with a licensed cannabis store on site. Donovan also operates a nearby micro-cultivator, because you can. Donovan said the entrances of the hotel and the cannabis store are separated to satisfy Alberta's cannabis retail regulator.
Guests are allowed to consume cannabis in their rooms, as well as in indoor and outdoor lounge areas. I made the executive decision very early that we're not going to put TVs in rooms, Donovan said.
I don't want it to be a traditional hotel where you come, you check in, I give you your keys, and you retreat to your room until you leave. I want you to pay attention to the people that you're with, whether that's people that you're bringing or people that you're meeting on the property. Mary Jane Manor's cannabis store is unusual, but it's not the only hotel to accommodate cannabis in Canada. Online listings show a scattering of cannabis-friendly hotels, resorts, short-term rentals, inns, and bed and breakfast.
Wow, isn't this interesting? I'm writing down some of this stuff, but I think I'll just keep this particular story open and send it to myself on my phone and read it later. So in Toronto, Lit Research is a Health Canada licensed cannabis research facility with a focus on consumer sensory testing that effectively functions as a consumption space. Ooh, that's nice. Founder Al said some other cannabis research facilities do consumer testing under less than ideal conditions.
And after doing a deep dive into the regulations, he said, I thought it would be possible to create more of a lounge type setting with the objective of getting this real world sensory data to basically help the industry, to help licensed producers get real consumer feedback, and to create a space where they could deepen their connections with consumers. Lit Research does research on behalf of licensed producers who can send the facility cannabis products before they hit the market for consumer testing.
Oh, really? I want to get a hold of these guys before I go to Ontario next. Producers can pay to use the lounge for consumers and bud tenders to test their product. In between testing events, cannabis consumers can walk in and sign up for research studies, usually in exchange for an administration fee. They fill out an intake form to help Lit gauge their experience level. Well, that's really cool.
Yeah. It's important to understand the individual that you're dealing with and what their experience and what their tolerance is. If you want to avoid any unpleasant experience with them, Stefsky explained. On top of federal regulations by Health Canada, The facility is subject to Ontario law that generally prevents smoking and vaping indoors. I wonder how that works with the hotels.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm curious, right? Like that's why I want to keep
Yeah.
this story up because I'm getting into driving and driving to Ontario and whatnot. I
Yep.
really enjoy it for the Karma Cup. So knowing about some of this stuff on the East Coast is really cool, and it'd be
Yeah.
really neat to be able to go stay there and whatnot, and then report back on it, right?
I know in Ontario it's illegal to smoke indoors. So I just wonder how it works with the hotels. Like you're not even allowed to smoke in a hotel room there.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't think anywhere.
Okay.
Anywhere I've been anyway. So we built out of this space with a lot of exchange equipment that keeps the air exchange equipment that keeps the air fresh in here. Another consumption space behind the Bend Cafe and Lounge in Grand Bend, Ontario. Oh, look that. There's another one to go find. Is located in back of a licensed retail store. Well, that's interesting.
Grand Bend's a beautiful place to visit too. Very, very nice.
Nice.
The venue includes an outdoor patio, presumably to get around the province's general prohibition on smoking in enclosed spaces. Cannabis tourism researcher Dupache said cannabis consumption spaces represent a very important element of this federal legalization that has been left out and should be a gray area.
Yeah, this also poses problems for tourists as well coming to Canada, not knowing that they're not allowed to consume in certain spaces or that laws are not the same across the country. Dubedge, or I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right, believes that once one province regulates on-premises cannabis consumption, others will follow. I agree.
Agreed.
Once they start,
Yep.
They will all jump in.
Yep. All the provinces are watching one another to see who's going to make the first move, and when it comes to regulations around consumption. C3 Smitherman previously served as the Ontario Health Minister, who spearheaded the Smoke-Free Ontario Act, robust provincial anti-smoking legislation that took effect in 2006.
Which honestly, I agree with the Anti-Smoking Act. Even when I was a smoker, I mean, like I didn't want my kids or little kids or non-smokers to be sitting in a place where they're getting bombarded with cigarette smoke and being forced to smoke themselves. So I agree with smoking cigarettes outdoors, right?
Yep.
Or away, or in a special area, like just away, so like non-smokers aren't getting hit. I agree with that. But if you're going to a lounge to consume cannabis, everybody's there for the same reason.
Yep.
So yep. I think it's a little different, but hopefully the provinces catch up eventually, right?
And the lounges that I was in years ago all had really, really good air systems.
Yeah. Yeah, the ones that when I go to either Planet Paradise in Toronto or I head out to BC and the New Amsterdam, and the only two places I've been, but they both have wonderful air exchange systems. Like, I mean, it doesn't stay cloudy in there. Like you're not,
yep.
You can see the other side of the room with ease, right? So,
yep.
Yeah, not every cannabis enthusiast is naturally going to be aligned with that, I think. Actually, in light of that law, Smitherman said he believes that indoor cannabis consumption, at least, is going to be easier to imagine in non-combustible form. I agree. Not every cannabis enthusiast is naturally going to be aligned with that, though, I think. And he continued, yeah.
But on the other hand, it can be a strong potential support for edibles and beverage categories, which I think are a bit underrepresented so far among sales in Canada. Like Dupache, Smitherman observed the Canadian provincial governments tend to follow the leader.
Yeah, and they may not be able to combust, but they can still vape as well. And dabs are vaping, so it'll be everything except for bongs and joints, right? And I find it's always easier to implement something when there's precedent, especially if it's gone well. That has the effect of significantly de-risking something for others. And I think there's enough consumption sites in Canada that they can go and they can get information from these sites.
Yep. They could have done that years ago when there was lots of consumption sites, especially in Toronto.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There were so many. I didn't even get to them all.
I didn't either, but I did visit quite a few of them. I think maybe 8 or 9 of them, and found most of them to be very pleasant experiences.
Nice. I've only been to 3, but I've enjoyed all of my experiences. Hello, Alexis Fox. How are you? Oh, she lives in an illegal state, Iowa in the USA. Up north are showing some really strong platforms of responsibility consumption. She loves it. Thank you so much. Hello, above average cannabis activists. It's nice to see you here. On to our next story, though. We are heading back over to StratCan. Cannabis retailers continue to face security challenges.
Retail cannabis store owners in Canada face ongoing challenges protecting their property from break-ins. Proprietors aren't only having to deal with the stress of financial loss that comes from being victims of crime, they're also forced to address the increased costs related to enhanced physical security. Metal gates have now been installed in our stores, and we sleep a lot better at night, said Lisa Bigioni, co-founder and CEO of Stocked Cannabis, which has 4 retail locations in Ontario and which experienced 2 break-ins in the week before Christmas. It's been costly. The gates were about $2,000 per store. And I wonder how their insurance, because we can't get insurance on it. That's a big problem right there.
It's a huge problem right there. The first break-in occurred at 5 a.m. and the second at 4 a.m. Other way around, maybe. Bigioni had already invested in sophisticated security measures and was alerted by an alarm on her phone. I could see them in the store on the cannabis, and it felt gross, she says. Who has 3 stores. She's got 3 stores in Scarborough and 1 in Niagara Falls. I called 911, and we hopped in the car and headed to the store, which is about 20 minutes from home.
Both break-ins were done by the same people, with a sledgehammer used to smash double-pane glass on the front door. A crowbar was also used to pry open locked product drawers behind the cash desk. The first time, they had to double back for the sledgehammers that they almost forgot. The second time, they did forget it. Both times they were in and out in around a minute. We had their car and license plates on camera. Both turned out to be stolen, of course.
Yeah, of course. However, having a high quality functional CCTV system made a big difference. The fact that we're compliant with our security cameras helped us capture them in action, says Bigioni. And this helped the police find them. In both cases, the police arrived before we did. The detective assigned to the cases was fantastic and kept us well informed along the way. Based on the evidence, he was confident the guys would be caught, which they were less than a week later.
A high-quality video system seems to be a logical choice. However, it isn't always a priority for some stores. We see store owners and operators cutting costs in the quality of the equipment installed, says spokesperson for Northern Force Security, a Toronto-headquartered company with a cannabis security practice. It may be CCTV cameras and systems of lower quality and functions, or insufficient access control systems and hardware.
Putting together a security plan is balancing act between perceived risk and costs. I mean, and that is for almost every company that you deal with. You know, so I mean, like they get into talking a lot about, like, honestly, like the rest of the story is pretty much about talking about security and how important it is, and I agree. And it really sucks that they've gotten broken into, and it's been happening. You know, for years. Like, I mean, when we had the gray market area stores coming in, it was all the same. Like, I mean, like they, you know, and they're running illegally, and, you know, they can't have insurance, and et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, they got, like, I mean, like there was always at least one a week that got robbed. And of course, when they call the cops, for the cops to come in and do their thing, they then get arrested because they're running an illegal store. And it's been terrible. Hey, we know that they caught him. Yes, they caught them.
Yes,
because they state they did. Right. No. Do they suspect people and the people be guilty? No, we just read that they were actually caught on camera. The cameras were good enough to get their whole face and their cars and what they were driving and what they were doing.
In those instances, anyway.
In those particular instances that we just read about. I'm sorry, I'm clicking again, going back to the stories. So this just happened. So they have to have a court case yet before they plead guilty or not. And I'm sure that.
And I'm assuming they were going after product, not cash.
Yeah, like they smashed everything going after product. Yep. But on to the next story. We are heading over to Mugglehead magazine. And Optimi Health submits clinical trial application after developing proprietary MDMA drug. I'm really curious about this story.
Vancouver-based Optimi Health Corp has submitted a clinical trial application after successfully producing the first batch of a novel variety of MDMA, designated as Opti-MHCl. The company said on Tuesday that it applied for the clinical trial, and the proprietary new drug variation will enable it to become the #1 supplier of MDMA worldwide.
The news follows Australia announcing that it will be allowing the use of MDMA for medical purposes. Optimi's new drug will be used for clinical studies and treating patients authorized to access the psychedelic through Health Canada's Special Access Program and Australia's new authorized prescriber scheme, which comes into effect in July. The upcoming study will be... Oh, no, sorry, that's not mine. I apologize.
The upcoming study will be conducted in partnership with Calgary's psychedelic therapy company, ATMA Journey Centers. The clinical trial will also involve the study of a psilocybin extract that the company has developed, and Opti has announced that it will be hosting an informative webinar about Opti-MHCl on February 9th.
Oh, today. Interesting. Optimi's chief science officer, Justin Kirkland, says that the Opti-MHCl MDMA that has been produced so far has a 99% purity level. I am proud to say that we now have an optimized route of the delivery of MDMA using our in-house technology, which guarantees stable production and quality. We feel our proprietary MDMA is the way of the future, and this unique offering can position us as the #1 supplier globally. Of course, Canada.
And Optimi CEO Bill Sibrick says the demand for high-grade MDMA is continuing to increase as the American Food and Drug Administration gets closer to approving the use of psychedelic for the treatment of PTSD. The recently developed prescriber scheme coming into effect this summer in Australia is another catalyst for accelerating MDMA production as well, according to Sibrick.
I don't like the acceleration. I just, if you're going to develop something, develop it and make it right. Optimi's stock price increased by 4% on Tuesday, and to the tune of 26 cents on the Canadian Securities Exchange. We've got other companies that contribute to the advancement of clinical MDMA. Optimi says OPTI MHCl was manufactured in adherence to good manufacturing practices, and therefore PharmaAla Biotech is no longer the only publicly traded company that will be supplying GMP MDMA in North America.
And PharmaAla Biotech is another Canadian company that has been making strides with clinical MDMA in recent days. On Monday, PharmaAla announced that it has become the exclusive MDMA supplier for Revive Therapeutics.
Revive will be using PharmaAla's product to develop a microneedle patch intended to treat mental health and substance use disorder in partnership with Toronto's pharmaceutical psychedelics company, PharmaTher Holdings. The company also recently shipped a large amount of its Laneo MDMA product to the United Kingdom after receiving Health Canada approval.
On Tuesday, Vancouver's Loeb Scientists Ltd. issued a statement congratulating Australia for its decision to approve the medical use of MDMA and psilocybin. This is such an important step by a national government recognizing the value of these compounds in treating certain mental health conditions, said Loeb CEO Philip J. Young.
Wow. Not really sure how much I agree with that. I mean, MDMA is already a chemical. I don't know if them playing with it is going to make it better or worse. I guess time is going to have to tell.
Them playing with it means that they own it. They own that derivative of it. And that's the whole plan with most of these companies, these biotech companies. They want to own that product.
And, like if it's a chemical and they're altering it to own it and it's not hurting, like MDMA or LSD, I'm not as upset about that as if when they try to manufacture a chemical THC, or now they're trying to manufacture a chemical psilocybin. I don't agree with that side. It's like, I know you want to own it, but it's a flipping plant or natural, or so leave you can't. Like, I mean, it's for all of us to own. But the chemical, I'm not as upset about them doing that as long as they're not making it bad. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like how old school drug dealers used to cut brown sugar in with stuff or whatever to, you know, like
baby laxative, anything at all. Yeah. Anything
at all. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that brings us up to break. It's time to hear from our sponsors and for us to take a little breaky break. You're watching the Psychedelics and Cannabis educational news here on paceradio.net and cbgtv.com.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
When you think of the number of unique products developed in the fields, kitchens, and labs at Legacy 420, it's hard to think that one stands out above the rest. But tell that to the thousands of people who have tried this amazing breakthrough product.
This is our Sacred Salve. This is actually our extra strength. It comes in 5 different strengths. It's all natural, all organic. It typically works within 10 to 15 minutes of putting it on. It's good for arthritis, it's good for inflammation, any kind of pain. We're very proud of it.
Sacred Salve, so easy to apply, along with soothing relief. To select a strength that's right for you, come in and talk to your trusted partner. Legacy 420 out on your road.
Pace Radio Network, by patients, for patients, and for those who want to know.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Let's share PACE everywhere. That way it can help create peace. People everywhere advocating cannabis education. You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
And we are back. Welcome back. You're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News, your Psychedelic and Cannabis educational news source here on Pace Radio Network, cbgtv.com, and the Boxcast app found on your Roku or Fire Stick TV. And we're back. Let's just jump right into the next story. We are heading over to StratCan, and we're taking a look at a survey. Survey illustrates highs and lows of emerging cannabis market.
A recent survey of Canadian cannabis license holders gives some insight into the changing dynamics of the industry and the differences in perspective and approaches between micro and standard license holder. The survey conducted by the Canadian Cannabis Exchange, B2B, Exchange for Cannabis and Hemp Products in Canada, polled 66 different federal license holders from a mix of standard and micro producers, along with nurseries and research license holders in nearly every province in Canada.
Respondents were asked an array of questions about their experiences with and perspectives on the industry, from revenue and profitability to supply chain challenges and interest in the export markets. Most respondents were C-suite members, followed by those working in sales and marketing, then growers and production staff, followed by the QA/QC. Steve Clark, who is the CEO of the Canadian Cannabis Exchange, the CCX, says the survey results show that the industry seems to be moving into a phase of refining processes to maintain profitability in an increasingly competitive market.
Canadian licensed producers have reported increased revenues, but they recognize that profitability is not growing at the same pace. Producers are taking measures such as innovation and streamlining resources to remain competitive as wholesale flower prices are expected to drop. The main challenges faced by LPs continue to be taxation, government regulation, and access to capital in a low price environment. According to the survey, only 10% of respondents are currently engaged in international exports, while 40% have plans to export in the future, he explains. Despite challenges such as competition, licensing, and knowledge barriers, international exports can potentially become a significant source of revenue and growth for LPs.
Respondents were asked to compare their revenue in 2022 with the previous year, with only 11% of respondents having a decrease. The remainder reported that their top-line revenues either increased or remained the same. However, the revenue increases were not evenly split between micros and standard, with 81% of the standard license holders, cultivars, processors, and/or medical sales only, reporting higher revenues in 2022 compared to just 47% of the micros.
And increases in profitability were not quite as robust, with 43% of respondents saying their profits increased in 2022, pointing to an increase in costs. As with revenue reports, standard licensees were more likely to report increases. 54% of standards reported higher profitability growth compared to just 30% of micro license growers, holders. The survey also looked at inventory levels among license holders, with micros more likely to be increasing inventory of packaged goods. 57% of standard license holders and 41% of micro license holders expected to increase their unpackaged inventory in 2023, while 45% of standards and 58% of micros expected to increase their packaged inventory.
License holders were also asked to list the various factors that lead to profitability and operational success in the cannabis space. The quality of the product was the most commonly cited reason for success, followed by descending order of importance: provincial purchase price, and provincial and federal taxation, input costs, branding, yield per square foot, production innovation, and vertical integration. Responses differ depending on who was answering, though, with micros more likely to cite the need for vertical integration, for example, or with different responses from those in more corporate roles versus those working the operations. Differences of opinion were greatest on yield per square foot, provincial and federal taxation, and branding.
And 52% of standard license holders and 41% of micros reported destroying finished cannabis in 2022, or just under half of all license holders surveyed. Rather than tossing out good cannabis, though, the most common reasons 43% of respondents cited for doing so over the past year was age of product. Another 25% say they destroyed cannabis due to quality and testing issues, while 11% did so due to small lot sizes, and another 21% declared other as a reason. Small lot sizes and you throw it out, that doesn't make sense to me.
They don't want to create packaging for a small amount if they won't
Yeah.
make and just that, I mean, all of this can go in oil for patients. Like it just most respondents said that they expect overall domestic cultivation in Canada to decrease or stay the same in 2023. 44% said that they expected cultivation to decrease. 39% expected it to remain the same, and only 17% expected an increase. Standard licensees were more likely to see domestic production decreases in 2023 compared to micros.
And when it comes to expectations of consumer demand in 2023, 46% said they expected demand to stay the same as in 2022. 32% expected it to increase, while only 22% expected it to decrease. As with expectations of domestic cultivation, standard licensees were more pessimistic on consumer demand than micros, with 27% of standards expecting consumer demand to contract in 2023 compared to just 17% of micros.
Respondents were also asked to rank which factors have the greatest impact on their profitability. Unsurprisingly, the most common response were taxation and government regulation, followed by access to capital, market access, increased competition, increasing costs, and a shortage of skilled labor. However, for micros specifically, market access and access to capital were the two biggest obstacles identified rather than taxation and government regulations. Unlike larger producers, micros often have a more difficult time getting approved by provincial buyers, have less capital for marketing and branding, and often have very little access to capital in general from traditional lending institutions or private investors.
And the report also notes that the ability to retain workers has not been nearly as challenging for the cannabis industry compared to other industries in Canada, according to an annual labor survey by the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters. Most respondents reported that they were engaged in some form of wholesale trade, with 73% saying that they were engaging in wholesale sales and 47% purchasing wholesale orders. There are numerous cultivators, especially micros, who sell to third-party processors who often then take over sales into provincial markets for the cultivator along with marketing.
The average wholesale price was $2.26 a gram, ranging from as little as 10 cents a gram to as high as $6 a gram. Most respondents said they expect these prices to decrease in 2023, while 25% expect an increase and 22% expect it to stay the same. Wholesale trading margins show micro licensees doing much better than standard license holders, with 63% of micro license respondents achieving margins in excess of 20% compared to just 46% of standard licensees.
Respondents were also asked about the direction they expected wholesale prices will trend in the next year, with just over half expecting prices to decrease and a quarter expecting an increase. The most commonly traded wholesale product was dry flower, as reported by 89% of wholesale buyers and 77% of sellers. Below, the top most traded tendencies diverged, as wholesale buyers' second most common transaction were oils and distillates, whereas for sellers, they were in concentrate. License holders were also asked about their retail presence. Just over half reported that having at least one retail SKU. The average number of SKUs was 14, and the number of provinces or territories carrying those SKUs at 3.7. More than half of license holders with retail products had SKUs in 3 or fewer jurisdictions, while 13% were present in 8 or more provincial territorial markets.
The survey also asked license holders to rank their provinces and territories by favorability. The most attractive provinces were British Columbia, of course, Alberta, Ontario, Saskatchewan, and then Manitoba, in that order. Nunavut, Yukon, and Prince Edward Island were considered the least attractive, likely due to the small size of those markets. Newfoundland had by far the highest average number of SKUs by province, according to respondents, with 29, followed by PEI with 21, Nunavut 18, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Manitoba with 15 each.
And when it comes to average retail margins, micros fared much better than standards, with 91% reporting retail margins between 20% compared to only 57% of standard license holders. More than 2/3 of respondents reported achieving margins between 20% and 49%. Micro licensees reported stronger margins, with 91% of respondents achieving retail margins between 20% and 49%, compared to just 57% of standard licensees.
Very interesting. You can go on to read the supply chain challenges in exporting cannabis from Canada. But I mean, it was kind of an interesting survey, learning how things are going up and down for different people. And it's really cool to find out that the small dudes are doing okay.
Yeah, they have a higher margin, but they're still having problem getting money. And
well, everybody's
having
problems getting money in the cannabis industry, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's very hard to happen. You know, the states will come a long way. We'll help that come a long way when they finally get on board. Heading over to silive.com. This bill would require medical cannabis to be covered by some insurance plans.
Staten Island, New York. Medical cannabis has helped thousands of patients effectively and safely treat pain from a wide range of medical conditions and has been found to be safer, in some cases more effective than other prescription medications. Life-saving for some, medical cannabis isn't an option for everybody. The high out-of-pocket cost remains the biggest barrier to patient access in New York because cannabis isn't covered by public health plans and commercial health insurance.
Some patients begin treatment only to stop due to inability to pay, while others turn to the black market, says a jurisdiction memo on the bill introduced to former Senator Diane Savino. That aim to add coverage of medical cannabis to public insurance programs. Access to medical cannabis should not be limited to those who can pay out of pocket. Efforts by registered organizations to offer discounts have helped, but are inadequate for many low-income patients, the justification memo says.
And Savino introduced the bill in 2021-2022 legislative session. The legislation would amend the state's public health law to deem medical cannabis a prescription drug, covered drug, or healthcare service to authorize insurance coverage through public insurance programs.
Excuse me. It would apply to 5 public insurance programs: Medicaid, Child Health Plus, Elderly Pharmaceutical Insurance Coverage, the Essential Plan programs, and Medicaid. The legislation would also authorize the health commissioner to certify medical cannabis dispensing sites as Medicaid providers solely for dispensing medical cannabis. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Some state is going to have to force this issue, Savino said on the Senate floor. I believe that our state is the one that should lead the way on this. After passing through 2 committees, the legislation passed in the Senate 53-10. It was sent to the Assembly's Way and Means Committee, but will not make it out of committee before the end of 2021-22 legislative session. A similar bill was introduced in the Assembly in 2018, but it didn't make it out of committee.
It was reintroduced in the 23-24 legislative session by Senator Jeremy Cooney, who was the co-sponsor on Savino's bill. While the legislation, if passed, would only apply to public insurance programs, it would also make the coverage of medical cannabis optional for commercial insurance carriers. However, if the plans providing coverage of medical cannabis under the public health care plans, such as Medicaid, managed care plans, managed long-term care plans, Child Health Plus plans, or essential plans, medical cannabis would be required to be covered, the legislation said.
The legislation's physical impact statement says covering to the extent medical cannabis displaces other prescription drugs would create substantial cost savings. While medical cannabis isn't currently covered by Medicaid, in New York, the practitioner office visits related to patient evaluation and certification for medical cannabis are Medicaid reimbursable services. The practitioners who participate with Medicaid are prohibited from requesting payment for medical cannabis certification from the member, regardless of whether the certification is provided during the initial office visit or subsequent to the first visit, according to the state.
And as of February this year, there are 45 practitioners on Staten Island who prescribe cannabis. So you can find them at a link there. That's really exciting. 45. That's wonderful.
I like they're doing this. It's the start, and I think all insurance companies should eventually cover this.
Yeah, it would be really great, and it'll happen. It's just gonna sadly take a minute. But small steps are better than no steps, and I keep saying that. We are heading over to Ganjapur, pardon me. Australia legalizes psilocybin and MDMA for medical purposes.
Australia's Therapeutic Goods Administration announced last week that it was making psychedelic substances, psilocybin and MDMA, legal for medicinal purposes starting July 1st, 23. Psilocybin and MDMA were each approved for medical use by the TGA in combination with psychotherapy and treatment-resistant mental illness in medically controlled environments in certain circumstances. The agency said in its announcement, the surprise move marked the world's first federal action to legalize medicinal psychedelics and follows months of public input. Currently, the drugs are considered prohibited substances in Australia and are only available in controlled clinical trials.
Under the new rules, psychiatrists will be able to prescribe MDMA, commonly known as ecstasy or Molly, only when it has a bunch of additives. Don't do it that way. Get pure MDMA for post-traumatic stress syndrome, and psilocybin for depression. Before prescribing the psychedelics, however, the psychiatrist will need approval from both a human ethics committee and under the authorized prescriber scheme, the agency said in a press release. TGA also warned that because patients may be vulnerable during psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, the program would require controls to protect these patients. Additionally, as there are not currently any Australia-based medications containing MDMA or psilocybin, participating psychiatrists will need to import the substances.
They have to import it themselves? That's a little crazy. TCA said in the announcement that its decision has been influenced both by research into psychedelics for treatment-resistant conditions, as well as thousands of public comments submitted in favor of psychedelics therapy. Australia approved the medical use of cannabis in 2016, but stopped short of adult-use cannabis legalization.
Yeah. But yet here they are with all these psychedelics, which is great. I just wish that they would catch up with the rest for sure.
Yeah.
We are at our final story. I couldn't figure out which way I wanted to say that. Coming from the Fresh Toast, what is cannabis indica and which strains are the best?
Anecdotal evidence says that that sativa strains will energize and inspire you, while indica ones will put you to sleep and make you feel relaxed. But this isn't necessarily true. If you happen to ask a dozen smokers their favorite strain, you would probably come up with a dozen different answers. Some prefer a hit that will knock their socks off, while some would prefer a mellow, relaxed stone. Some are looking for a head high, while others just want to feel their bodies relax.
How does an indica high feel like? When you hear a seasoned user asking for a strain that's fire, bomb, or loud, he's probably referring to a potent indica strain. Cannabis indica originated from the Middle East. To be more specific, it has roots in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Tibet. The cultivars of cannabis indica are shorter than the sativa plants, and they generally have a broader, bushier appearance with dark green leaves. They are popular with some home growers because they have high yields with a shorter flowering duration.
For the longest time, indica strains have been associated with a strong body high, which is also referred to as couch lock. However, not all indica strains act in this way, especially when the strain is hybrid. Indica's effect on the human body is usually referred to as being stoned or having a body high. This means that you are likely to feel its effects through your body as opposed to in your head. You are bound to feel very relaxed, which could eventually lead to a feeling of drowsiness and even sedation. Indica highs also tend to enhance your other senses like sound, smell, and touch.
Its high could also be described as a lethargic, one that's almost a lazy body high. Despite being profoundly relaxing, the body high could sometimes be heavy, giving you the urge to just sit on the couch and relax. That's why they call it indica coach. The effect is commonly referred to as couch lock.
Although indica strains are believed to cause your attention span to become shorter, you might be surprised that they could inspire creativity. Most predominantly, indica strains are known to give relief. They have the ability to give relief from anxiety, stress, body pain, migraines, and spasms. They can also help in the relaxation of muscles, as well as the reduction in frequency of seizures. As a whole, indica strains are known to fight nausea and depression.
Mm-hmm. The last effect of indica, sedation, can be realized with very small doses. That is why it is a great sleeping aid. And here are some indica strains. And we won't really read about them, but we'll list them off. We've got Hindu Kush and Northern Lights and Granddaddy Purple. I love Granddaddy Purple. Blueberry. If you can ever find original blueberry, it's an amazing strain. 9-pound Hammer, Forbidden Fruit, G13, Death Star, Strawberry Banana, Romulan. They're all very great strains. They listed off some wonderful ones here. And then there's some medical uses for indica strains.
Yeah. It has a deep, relaxing, sedating high that can get you through massive amounts of pain and insomnia, and give you much needed rest at night. It is also great for helping patients suffering from nerve damage as well as muscle spasms. In summary, it provides a full body calm that has very intoxicating properties. Preliminary research has pointed out that indica plants tend to have higher concentration of CBD than sativa plants. This is why the majority of indica effects coincide with those of CBD. Indica strains, therefore, show great promise in resolving the below medical conditions.
Sleep and insomnia, anxiety relief, inflammation relief, seizure reduction, muscle spasms. While using indica strains to medicate any of these conditions, it is recommended that you use proven breeds like Afghan Kush, Northern Lights, Romulan. Most of these strains should be easily purchased from cannabis dispensaries.
Yep. By underlying the factors and circumstances that will have an effect on your high, you can make informed decisions of what high you want. Set and setting. Different scenarios can have a wildly different effect on your high. Consuming your cannabis in a relaxed environment will give you much different experience than smoking it in a crowded waiting area. Always set your environment for the best effect.
Yeah, I mean, set and setting is very important. Delivery method, dose, the profile of the cannabis, the terpenes, how old it is, your tolerance. So you can have a read through this article. There's some really cool information in there for sure. But we have reached, the end of our time here on today's show. So we have to say goodbye for today. So for our friends at legacy420.com and the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, that's our psychedelics and cannabis educational news broadcast for today, February 9th, 2023. And our next one is on Monday with Reverend Callie and Al. So come on back and catch them on Monday. They're always wonderful. Have a great weekend. See you later.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more. We've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.